Alright guys, so now that Spider-Man No Way Home is out, I thought that it would be best to do a spoiler review to get into what I liked and disliked about the movie. And yes, I know that this movie is being touted as one of the best Spider-Man films ever made, but I did have some issues with it that I'll get into later in the review. But first, I want to talk about what this movie did right, because this felt like a huge departure from the last two Tom Holland movies, which I did enjoy but didn't love. Thankfully, No Way Home was a big improvement though. The action scenes were way more intense, there's less reliance on the bigger Marvel universe, and the personal issues that Peter Parker faces actually feel like they have some weight. Having Aunt May die and Peter losing his relationships with his friends were more moments that finally brought that drama I've been wanting to see from these movies. The same drama we saw with Gwen's death in TASM 2 or any of the multiple deaths we saw in the Raimi films. It obviously would have been better if characters like May, Ned, and MJ were more developed in the previous Tom Holland movies, but we'll take what we can get. In terms of the villains, they were also done really well. Thankfully, they didn't feel like quick cameos and actually had things to do. Willem Dafoe even said in an interview that he didn't want to be in this movie unless his role was something substantial, so I was happy to see that the writers actually did that and gave these returning characters the spotlight they deserve. I mean, come on, Doc Ock talking about the power of the sun and him becoming a good guy at the end of the movie were great moments to see. Even Electro, from his design to his character, was greatly improved, and I like that they gave him a defining characteristic to stand out amongst the group. You can tell that the Lizard and Sandman kinda got sidelined, but since this movie is so crowded as it is, it makes sense that some characters would get the short end of the stick. I was also kinda disappointed that they reused old footage from previous movies to show their human forms, but at least they got the original actors to voice the characters again. A really nice touch though was how Sandman acted as Peter's ally at first, referencing the end of his arc in Spider-Man 3. I really like that attention to detail. Now the Goblin, I think for the most part was used really well here. I love that they picked him to be the frontliner of the villains, and it was really cool seeing him do the most physical and mental damage to Peter in the movie. That moment where Peter's just wailing on him and he's constantly smiling was so sick. I was kind of sad to see him toss out the old mask, but I get what they were going for with the new hooded look. My only gripe was that I don't think they used him enough. It seemed like after the big apartment battle, they really wanted to shift over to showing the other Spider-Man and just kind of forgot about all the villains until the final battle. Again, every scene he was in was great, but I was looking for more scenes of him by himself or plotting with the other villains. They all kind of just go AWOL until the end, so I didn't really feel like I got enough of the villain-hero dynamic I was looking for. This goes into the bigger point I wanted to make, which is that I felt like this movie was more so carried by the character relationships and interactions than the actual plot, which is a good thing and a bad thing. To be more specific, I feel like the writing and dialogue really stood out here, especially with the Spider-Man's interactions with each other. Every line coming out of Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield was either a clever joke or really purposeful. Just from a few lines, we understand what these other Spider-Man have been doing since their last movies, and they have a lot of wisdom to teach the younger Tom Holland Spider-Man. Even the way each of them are first introduced coming out of their portals, with Tobey having the more low-key entrance and Andrew with the more outgoing one, really speaks to how well the writers understood these characters, and the same can be said for the villains. Where it falters a bit is the actual storyline. It really isn't too complex. The villains kind of just show up, do a little damage, and they're taken care of in the end pretty easily. There wasn't really a great sense of tension or any thought I had that the Spider-Man would fail. Nothing like how I felt with the Avengers battling Thanos for the Infinity Stones in Endgame. I honestly feel like with the length of the movie, they would have had to split it into two parts to tell a more satisfying storyline, but in the end, if you look at this more as a character-driven movie with Tom Holland's Peter Parker at the forefront, I think it makes up for it. Although I love crazy comic book storylines, I am a sucker for something a little bit more focused. I also can't say I didn't love the wrap-up of this movie with Tom Holland donning the classic red and blue suit and swinging out of his apartment window. The visual there reminded me of other great Spider-Man media we've gotten, and it gives fans like me hope that the next trilogy will have the more self-contained Spider-Man stories we've been waiting for. Plus, I'm sure the recently announced two-part Spider-Verse sequel will give us that crazy multiverse storyline I was hoping for. Other slight problems I had was with the classic gray Marvel color grading and the direction of the action scenes. The best way I can describe it is that I enjoyed what was happening on screen, but just not how it looked, similar to Endgame. We barely even get a good clean look at Maguire in the full suit, and there are certain shots that I just wish would have stayed on a little longer. Also the music. I've seen so many fan edits of medleys with all the Spider-Man movie themes mixed together, but other than a few musical cues here and there, the score was pretty generic. But yeah, despite all my nitpicks, this was still an amazing cinematic achievement. I honestly don't mind the problems I have with this movie that much because I'm just appreciative that we have this and it's as good as it is. I'm giving Spider-Man No Way Home a 9 out of 10. Thanks for watching. Comment down below your thoughts and favorite spoilery moments, and I'll see you guys in the next video.